It's very simple and exactly the opposite of what you suppose. July 24, 2019 by Anna von Reitz. I have explained it before and shall explain it again. It is so simple, so huge, so anti-intuitive that people tend to bounce it right out of the brain matrix the first time they hear it, so multiple repetitions are necessary, no matter how frustrating that is for me. Repetition is also necessary for all the newbies joining our ranks every day. They continue to send me astonished questions and even try to shame me and the others who are claiming our national credit. This is because they don't yet understand the information in this short article. 1. We have been living under a British-controlled military protectorate since the spring of 1863. 2. In order to end this protectorate, we have to organize our unincorporated states of the Union and reconstruct our own federal-level states of states organizations. We haven't done that, so the protectorate drags on. 3. We haven't been told anything about this necessary action or taught anything about it in school, because the British and the Pope have been benefiting from it, at our expense. 4. Thus, technically, we are in this bind as a result of our own inaction, but we can hardly be expected to ever take action because we aren't made aware of the fact that we need to do anything of the sort. 5. Now that we finally woke up and realize what must be done, we find that we have been misrepresented by those benefiting from this continuing travesty in breach of trust, and have been deliberately misidentified as criminals and slaves belonging to the municipal United States government. 6. These so-called 14th Amendment citizens are a political subclass created by Congress in the wake of the Civil War as a means to re-enslave plantation slaves and convert their ownership from private ownership to public ownership. Read that these people were owned by private slave owners prior to the war, and then were claimed by and owned by public sector slave owners, the municipal Washington, D.C. government operated by members of Congress. See Article 1, Section 8, Clause 17. These vermin have been running their own plenary oligarchy in competition with our actual government, as public property after the war. Let that sink in. And now let it sink in that they have deliberately and with malice aforethought falsified records to claim that you are such a 14th Amendment citizen of the United States. In 1866, civil rights were created by the Civil Rights Act of 1866. This was done to define for the rest of the world how Congress intended to treat their new slaves, and what privileges they would guarantee to these unfortunates. Also in 1866, the Municipal Congress adopted the metric system, a foreign system of weights and measures, by which they could define their new slaves in a system separate from the rest of the population. Babies born into this new form of slavery would be weighed using kilograms and grams instead of pounds and ounces. This would also then serve to convey them automatically into Admiralty jurisdiction. To expedite the conveyance of people from one status to another, they adopted a system of conversion, allowing them to legally convert pounds into metric weights and measures, and thus from a condition of natural freedom and national land law, into a condition of slavery under Admiralty law, at the same time. See the Metric Act of 1866. Thanks for this information goes to Kurt Kallenbach. Former plantation slaves were the original targets of this malice, which benefited both the British monarch and the Pope. Since these people exist under Admiralty jurisdiction, the British monarch can control and tax them, and as they are owned by the municipal United States, so can the Pope. Over time, this scam and outrage against common decency and our Constitution proved so profitable that they created the Federal Reserve, an institution formed and financed solely on human capital and on our good faith and credit, our presumed slavery, in other words. They simply abused their positions of trust to falsify records and claim that we are all their slaves, all 14th Amendment citizens of the United States, as recently verified by the U.S. State Department. 7. In concert with the creation of the Federal Reserve, the guilty corporations responsible for all this began the conversion of our lawful money into legal tender, fiat Federal Reserve notes. Such promissory notes are IOUs promising future repayment, no different than any other IOU. Many people are still confused about this. They think that when they went to a bank and got a home loan or a car loan, that they were given something of actual value by the bank, but instead they were given IOUs. In fact, they were duped into loaning their homes and their cars as assets that the banks seized upon and used as the basis to extend credit to other borrowers, and profit themselves, of course. A home loan in this system is a loan of your home to them, and all they give you for it in return is a share of their already pre-existing debt and their mortgage. As a state-of-state organization, these same criminals are holding title to your home and land under a purported protective custodial relationship owed to your public trust, John Maynard Doe, for example, and they have hypothecated debt against your home and land already, resulting in a mortgage owed by the state-of-state, like the state of California. This is the mortgage you get stuck paying off for them. It has nothing to do with your voluntary loan of your home to them, when you mistakenly agreed to a home loan, and everything to do with yet another level of fraud being practiced against you by the banks, your employees, and your international trustees, the Pope and the Queen. 8. Since the adoption of the Federal Reserve System by the municipal United States government, you have been forced under the false pretense that you are a 14th Amendment citizen of the United States to exchange your labor and goods for nothing but their empty paper promises to pay. Your goods and labor are exchanged for IOUs, evidences of debt owed by a foreign corporation. If you accept an IOU as payment for a glass of lemonade, are you the debtor or the creditor? The creditor. If you accept Federal Reserve notes as payment for your house, are you the debtor or the creditor? The creditor. In all of these transactions you are providing actual and factual goods and labor, and they are providing promises to pay at some unknown future date. And they never pay, so you never get paid, and that is what creates their national debt and your national credit. Because these vermin operate as corporations, they simply run up your credit to the stratosphere, then declare bankruptcy, and leave you on the hook as the presumed co-signer to pay their debts. That's what happened in 2009 when the vermin bankrupted their trademarked Federal Reserve System and shifted their debts onto the backs of the weary public slaves, all the presumed to exist 14th Amendment citizens of the United States. So, having read this, read it again. And again. Read it however many times it takes to sink in, and then, ask yourself, am I a 14th Amendment citizen of the United States? Have I received anything of actual value in return for my goods and services, or have I been the source of whatever value there is in these transactions? Am I a creditor in this situation, or a debtor? And while you are at it, notice that the 14th Amendment is itself a sham and a fraud, a measure adopted by a Scottish corporation as a by-law to Articles of Incorporation disguised as the territorial United States Constitution and merely doing business as the United States of America, Incorporated. That corporation, formed in Scotland in 1868, went bankrupt in 1907. It's long defunct, and so is its 14th Amendment. 9. So here's the news for the Pope and the Queen: you are responsible for these corporations and their operations on our shores. They have operated as crime syndicates and you are responsible for their misdirection. The Pope is responsible under ecclesiastical law to shut them down. You are both responsible for these despicable and criminal claims, acts, and frauds perpetrated in breach of trust against every American. The debts of these corporations over and above market rates of services we agreed to receive as part of the constitutions are all yours, and the interest and leases and other fees and escrows owed, together with the actual principal assets, are all ours. We claimed our reversionary trust interest all the way back to our days in heaven, and we are the priority creditors without any doubt. And we set ourselves free of any presumption, claim, or pretense otherwise.